being benched for Jalen Hurts during the Eagles' loss to Green Bay. Yesterday, head coach Doug Peterson was asked if a decision had been made regarding who starts this week against New Orleans, and here is what he said.
No, I have not made a decision yet. Not prepared right now to make any statement or decisions on that. I'm still processing a lot of things and going through a lot of things before I make that decision. So that when I know, you'll know.
Sure. I'm not asking what the decision is, but what goes into that decision?
I would like to keep those private, so that's just between me and me.
I hadn't heard that part of it. That's funny. Okay, Graziano, what are we hearing about this situation?
Look, I'm not Greg McElroy. I'm not going to break down quarterback tape, but I have covered my share of Monday head coach news conferences, and I know that when the coach says he hasn't decided who the quarterback's going to be next week, it's probably not going to be the guy that started this past week. So it sounds like the Eagles are at least giving serious consideration to starting Jalen Hurts if they haven't already made that decision. Oftentimes the coach will want to make sure and tell the quarterbacks before he tells the entire world, but I would expect an announcement tomorrow on who the Eagles starting quarterback will be this week, and I don't think anybody would be shocked if it turned out to be the rookie second-round pick Jalen Hurts.
All right, now hold that thought a minute, Dan, because I do want to come back to you on what this all may mean long-term. But Greg, let me come to you from a quarterback's perspective. Don't just tell me, but show me who you believe should be the quarterback in Philly this week.
Well, if the goal for the Eagles is to continue to try for a playoff push and to win games right now, the quarterback needs to be Jalen Hurts. And I'll show you exactly why. Because there were moments in which he made everyone around him better. It's 3rd and 4, critical down and distance. There's pressure off the left-hand side. Guess what? The running back completely busts the protection. Thanks a lot, Jeff Saturday. Clean it up. All right, running back inside. Here comes the Mike or the nickel right off the left. Unblocked. Jalen's unfazed. He throws a strike to Jalen Reagor down the left side. But here's where he really helps the protection. You have pass rushers up front that are trying to get after the quarterback. But when you have a mobile option, you can't overrush the passer. It's exactly what happens right here. You have 3 Green Bay Packers that are on the same level as Jalen Hurts, and he bursts free, makes a guy miss, and he turns it into a first down. Similar situation right here. 4th and long, 4th and forever, obvious passing situation. Guy gets rushed past Jalen Hurts. Gives him a little bit of a window to buy a little time and throw a strike downfield for his first career touchdown pass. This is what's going to allow Philly to be a little better down the road, is that Jalen Hurts' mobility makes not just his receivers better to buy a little extra time to get open, but his offensive line, which has been a problem all year, his offensive line to basically keep guys in front because he can exploit you if you get rushed past the passer.
I like it. So it sounds like the coach is leaning towards Hurts, and Greg is definitely leaning towards Hurts. Chris Canty, which way are you leaning?
Well, the fact that Doug Peterson can't make up his mind about who his starting quarterback is going to be when you're paying Carson Wentz $32 million a year says all you need to know. We got an 11.5 game sample size on Carson Wentz, and it hadn't been good enough, G. It just hasn't. He leads the league in turnovers. He's been the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. It's just not happening for him. And with the defense playing the way that it is, it's a real shame. So I can understand what Greg is saying by giving Jalen Hurts an opportunity to show what he can do. And you did see a little bit of a spark in that game against the Green Bay Packers. So I just say maybe Jalen Hurts might be the direction that you turn just because Carson Wentz hasn't worked out.
Again, they're going up against a great defense this weekend in New Orleans. Meanwhile, let me get Graziano back in here if I can, because one of the suppositions that I have been acting upon for the last several weeks is that because of the contract, Carson Wentz is the quarterback of the Eagles next year no matter what. And Dan, we were talking about this morning. That may not be 100% right.
Not 100%. Still more likely than not. Look, people have to understand they can't really cut him. It's a $59 million cap hit if they cut him, so you can't possibly carry that. If you could trade him before the 3rd day of the league year, when his $10 million 2021 roster bonus kicks in, the dead cap hit would be about $35 million. That's a wash. That's about what you'd be carrying if you kept him on the team as a cap hit in 2021. So if you could find a team that's willing to take a shot on a guy who's going to be 28 years old, that was once the number 2 pick in the draft, that has played well in the past, and the acquiring team would only have to pay him, I say only, about $25 million a year, not that $32 million a year. It's possible they could move on, but the Eagles would have to decide that it's done, there's no hope for Carson Wentz, and they would have to be willing to go with a very cheap option next year, and that could end up being Jalen Hurts if he shows enough over the last couple weeks. A lot of ifs there, but yeah, they could theoretically trade him if they decided they didn't believe in him anymore.
I thought it was worth putting on the show because I think a lot of people think, well, no team's going to trade for that $59 million. Well, you're not trading for that. You're trading for something that is a reasonable quarterback number going forward. You have to find someone who believes in Wentz. That might not be out there. We'll find out.
Coaching in place with the Jets next year. We've all known that for quite a while. I think what's interesting about this situation is the dynamic between Adam Gase and Greg Williams that has existed since they got the jobs. Remember, the organization wanted Greg Williams as the defensive coordinator. One of the reasons Gase got the job as head coach is that he was okay with that. And for 2 years, they stayed out of each other's way, right? I mean, Greg Williams ran the defense and Adam Gase ran the offense and was the head coach. But, you know, Greg Williams had a lot of autonomy over that defense. And I think, you know, that separation of powers can be a problem in an organization. So as the Jets look forward next month to try and figure out who their next head coach is going to be, I think it's incumbent upon them to do it differently this time and make sure that you hire someone who's empowered to sort of establish the culture in the organization versus, hey, you come in, get the quarterback right, we'll let somebody else take care of the defense. I just think there's a lot of soul searching the Jets have to do in terms of this process that they're about to undergo.
That's a very nice way of saying that they have absolutely no idea what they're doing, and that starts with ownership. And Chris Canty, let me come to you here on this if we could, because Adam Gase, whether it's his decision fully or not to make the firing of Greg Williams yesterday, what did you think of that?
I didn't understand why the Jets didn't ask Adam Gase to pack up his office as well. I mean, his key chart shouldn't work when he showed up to the building on Monday. But the fact is that this feels like another one of those situations where Adam Gase is deflecting responsibility away from his job. He's the head coach, and in an end-of-game situation like what took place on Sunday, he's got the headset on. He's got a timeout in his back pocket. Why didn't he use the timeout in that situation? I mean, you practice that, you drill that every single week in the National Football League. And even if you don't agree with the call, at least take the timeout so you can see what formation the Raiders are running, personnel grouping, and you can match it and get your very best play. He failed to do both of those. You can't just put it on Greg Williams. It's Adam Gase as well. The buck stops with him. He's the head coach.
Yeah, Jeff Saturday, what are your thoughts?
Absolute trash, Greeny. I mean, listen, this team has been awful. Whether the worst team offensively in the league and have been the entire season. Defensively, they ranked one of the bottom. But to fire a guy after this call is absolutely ridiculous. Listen, he's an aggressive play caller, but he was in cover 3 a couple plays before where they overthrow Aguilar. So which play do you want to fire him for? Like, I mean, his defense isn't playing good. Your offense isn't playing good. I agree with Chris. Like, how are you going to blame this on one guy? And you know the call. That's the worst part of as a head coach. You knew the call. It didn't work out. So all of a sudden you're going to fire a guy with 4 weeks left. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. Let him finish it out with the rest of you. You all know you're going to be fired at the end of the season. I just don't like putting it on placing the blame on one guy. Absolutely ridiculous.
On some level, you almost might say they did him a favor by not making him have to stick it out with the rest of us for these last 4 weeks and go spend the holidays with his family. Dan Graziano, do we have any sense of where it goes from here? Again, you pointed out there's going to be a total wholesale change there. Is there any reading of the tea leaves to be done on what direction they may look?
Look, I mean, it's early yet. Obviously, I believe the Jets are thinking along these lines. And you do hear rumblings, right? Now, it's tough this time of year to sort the rumblings from the reality. Some of the rumblings you hear, that you've heard a lot of Jim Harbaugh rumors connected to the Jets. We still don't know if Jim Harbaugh even wants back in the NFL. And if he does, what kind of interest there will be. I found it interesting. Our Jets reporter, Rich Cimini, raised this possibility in his Sunday Notebook this week about Doug Peterson. If the Eagles decided to move on from him, a connection exists there. Joe Douglas, the Jets GM, was in Philadelphia with Peterson, so could be an interesting situation to watch there as well. But you know, they've had a jump on this. Obviously, the Jets have been thinking along these lines for a while, and their search will begin in earnest in 4 weeks if it hasn't already.
Yep, Cimini has been around that team forever. I think that is definitively one to watch, depending on what happens in Philadelphia. And with that thought in mind, we'll take our first short time out here. But coming up, the truth hurts in Philly. Should Doug Peterson, who is still the coach, keep Carson Wentz on the bench? Greg will show you exactly who should start next Sunday and why. And then no one has played better than Patrick Mahomes, except maybe